Town.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music. Today, guys, go to www.velocitiesandmusic.com. Tell us about our new website, what you think of it, because your opinion's what matters, not what we do. We just kind of guess at what you guys wanted in our new website and what we kind of enhancements, make it look a little cooler, make it a little bit easier to use. But if you guys want anything, now's the time to tell us, so go to www.velocitiesandmusic.com. Let us know what you think about our new site. Today we're going to review the sophomore album from a band called Fun. The album is entitled Some Nights. This is a band that Tom and I had the privilege of meeting, and we reviewed their first album a couple years ago.
Aim and Ignite.
Yep. So Tom, want to just kind of give us some background about Aim and Ignite, the transition? It's been 3 years since it came out.
Yeah, well, Nate, the vocalist for this band, was in a band called The Format before this. They had a couple of really good albums. I mean, really, between The Format and Fun, they represent two acts that, well, previous to this album, at least this is the way I felt, really at the top of the pop game. Because what they were doing is they were taking pop music kind of in the same way that, like, late 90s, early 2000s of Montreal was doing, where they were taking very much pop melodies and putting them with a lot of interesting instrumentation and just creating a very unique sound. I mean, if you listen to these guys' first album, Aim and Ignite, it calls a lot on that Queen, very much rock, but also very operatic and theatrical kind of pop sound.
And Nate's vocals just completely match.
Oh yeah, it's perfect. He's a tremendously talented vocalist. And when we talked to them, they were super nice guys. We saw them perform right afterwards, and I mean, they're just born performers. They were terrific. So I've been really anticipating this album because even the more I listen to Aim and Ignite, I love it. I think it's a nearly perfectly executed pop rock album as far as the indie side of pop goes.
And it's kind of cool, 2 years since we reviewed it, but 3 years since it came out.
Yeah.
For us to look back on that album too, because we both really liked it then. I think we gave it like low 80s.
Yeah. Well, it was early on when we were reviewing our systems.
Now I think that's a low 90s album.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I mean, it just showcased Fun's inherent qualities. It made it was so endearing. It made you feel like you knew these guys. And that's something very special in a songwriting process. Now, now what changed in Some Nights?
Well, this album is completely different. One thing that you got to take into account is they changed record companies. They went from Network to Fueled by Ramen. Fueled by Ramen.
Ramen noodles.
I don't like that record company very much. I'll just come out and say that right now. But they got producer to do this that was different than their last one, obviously, with the new record company. And so this one goes towards a much more electronic side. But it's interesting because it's paired with actually, in general, much darker lyrics. I mean, you've got even a couple F-bombs just in the 2-minute intro to this album alone. And Nate is he's really putting his anger into this. And I mean, he is, to me, still the highlight of this album. I think that the vocal melodies are great. But it's interesting because they're paired with these very electronic, sometimes hip-hop beats, sometimes just kind of, I don't know how better to say it than just the kind of fast-paced electronica at times.
Right. I think it really meets like Kanye West style production and with like Coldplay's Milo Xyloto.
Yeah, that's a good
songwriting style. And I gotta say, are you ready for just the bitch sandwich here? All right, I hated this album. The more I listened to it, the more I hated it. I felt like these guys just completely dropped the ball. They went completely the wrong way. They're trying so hard to make just like a pop rock monolith of an album, and they just fall. And it falls because of bad production, bad choice in sounds that they use, which I attribute to songwriting. Now, we'll get into that a little bit more later. But I think that, other than Nate's vocals, there isn't a whole lot of good things on this album. I find that it's taxing from the moment you put it on. One of the strongest tracks is in the first two, the Some Nights intro and then Some Nights. I think that's kind of the strongest part of this whole album, and it slowly just goes downhill from there, and it didn't even start that high. I see a lot of references to Queen, as mentioned before, but even Elton John. A lot of times there's several songs on here where the verse is at one tempo, a little bit of a faster paced tempo, and then it slows down for the chorus, except they don't do it with nearly the style that Elton John or other big pop names from the 70s and 80s were able to do it. And that is a huge issue. They just sound so rookie. They sound amateur-like, and these guys are better than that. I've heard it. I've heard Aim and Ignite. I know that these guys can write really really good stuff. So I have to attribute it, as Tom said, to the record label change. And, you know, I know, and you know, on Spotify, Tom and I are big Spotify users. Find us on Spotify because it's really cool interaction for musicians and got people into music. One thing on Spotify, they have all the extra tracks and the info about the band talking about this album, and they were talking about the writing process and how it was so much more. They wanted to create like a world for this album, the Some Nights world. No, I mean, you can't do that by borrowing so much from other artists and not really having any of your own stuff there. It just sacrificed everything that was fun or what they established as themselves. And I applaud the ambition, but I just it didn't come off well. I think that the auto-tune was the key feature that just ruined things. But you know, halfway through the album, when you get to track 5, it gets better. That is the worst song I think I've ever heard. It's up there with "Stupid Ho" by Nicki Minaj. Like, it is very bad, and the album doesn't get better from there on out. So they lied to me, and that makes me even more angry. Now, Tom, we had a conversation the other day on the phone about, because Tom and I call each other like music nerds and talk about music. We had a conversation the other day. You know, you mentioned that you thought that the songwriting was good. I want to use this as an opportunity for us to kind of clarify
what we mean by songwriting.
What we mean by songwriting.
Well, you know, and taking one step back before we take a few steps forward, you made a good point in saying that we might be putting a lot of blame on the record company. Maybe it's the band. I don't know. I wasn't there when this album was made, but I do know that I just don't like a lot of the artists that come out of Fueled by Ramen as a label, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was the kind of thing where Fun wrote these songs to be in a more different instrumental outlet. But then the record company said, no, let's put auto-tune on them and make it electronic, and then more people will like it. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened, but then again, I don't know if the band had a lot more say in it than that too, so I just don't really know what to put the blame, but really, it doesn't matter, because we're not here to assign blame, we're just here to talk about the end product of an album that we listen to, and that's what this is. And so when it comes down to it, yes, I really did actually like a lot of the songwriting, but here's what I meant by songwriting. What I mean by songwriting is I mean the chord progressions and I mean the vocal melodies. When it comes to pop and rock, this doesn't really work with like hip-hop and instrumental music like classical or post-rock. But when it comes to like pop and rock, what I mean when I say songwriting is if I took everything out of this song and played it on just an acoustic guitar or a piano, what would it sound like? And I think all of these songs, with a couple exceptions, would be really good. In fact, way better than they are on here. And so to me, that shows good songwriting. Now, there's also song structure, and there's more compositional aspects with when you're bringing in other instrumentals.
That all gets thrown into the loose definition.
Exactly. So what I mean by that is I love the melodies, I love the chord progressions, I love the feelings they're trying to emote, but then you water it down with these cheap-sounding kind of garage band, amateur-type samples and beats, and it just kills this sentimentality. So, like I said, I would have liked this better if it was a guy with an acoustic guitar pounding out the chord progressions and belting the lyrics. But you throw the auto-tune in there. You throw in just all this superfluous stuff that is really unnecessary, and I just think it really kills it.
On top of all this, this album isn't even close to being original.
Yeah.
They are blatantly ripping off Kanye West production and some of those other artists. But even if they would have been more successful in the production aspect of things, this album has still been made in this style by a number of artists before them. And it just has completely ruined the best parts of what Fun is. And therefore, I'm bitter. I've never been so bitter. I'm thinking to myself that I don't ever want to hear this album again. I hope that Fun can you know, turn the ship the other direction, because I don't think that this highlights their best qualities, and that's something that's really unfortunate for an up-and-coming band. We'll see. And, you know, by the way, we do have, you know, albums that we hate, and sometimes you guys don't hate the albums that we hate, in fact love them. So if you do, please tell us what you want. We're not going to be confrontational about it. You know, music's all about what's important to you, and if you guys like this, by all means, go on liking it, love it, because Fun is a really cool band that hopefully sticks around for a while. I'm sitting right now, I did not like this. I am at 45. I'm
going 59. I liked it better than you, but I was still disappointed overall.
Yeah, no, I just got really turned off. The more I mean, I listened to this thing 6 or 7 times, and by the 7th time, I mean, I just couldn't finish it. It was just that god awful. So, interested to see what you guys think, so leave us a comment, www.velocitiesandmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. Also, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. That is where we do our talking with our fans, and we'd love to hear your opinion on some nights there. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.